Welcome to the Family Lab, where we investigate all things parenting and home management. In lab episodes like this one, we talk big picture strategy first, and then we'll go into experiments that each of us have tried in our homes. And then we'll give you some experiments that you can try in your homes. And we will wrap it up with ideas from contributors and listeners about what has worked in your own homes. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce my co-host for the day, Sam Kelly. Sam is a therapist turned coach, and she has done a lot of work in helping families distribute work and figure out how they can work together to help their houses run smoothly. So, Sam, would you like to tell us a little bit more about you and your family?
Yes. So I call myself a feminist coach for mothers. And we're
Awesome.
teaching kids how to notice what needs to be done in the home and then proactively do it without waiting to be asked. I am a mother of three kids. I also am the primary financial provider. So I'm working. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. We have neurodivergence. We have strong-willed personalities. So we're just a normal American family.
Yes, sounds so familiar. Excellent. And I failed to mention, I am a mother of five, from 9 to 19. So one is no longer in our house. So we have four living here right now. And my mix is four boys and one girl. So that's where we are. So as we start this, I'd just like to start from the highest level and why it matters that kids participate at home. And I'd love to hear your take on that, Sam.
Yeah, so many reasons. Primarily, when we teach kids how to not only just participate, but how to share the mental load of managing a home in age-appropriate ways, we're not only breaking the cycle of motherhood burnout, we're also breaking the cycle of inequitable partnerships. It also gives them executive functioning skills, which is, research shows, the most important skill set to have in order for success as adults.
I love that so much. And I think it has a lot to do with, interpersonal skills and respect as well, because it's also impacts the relationship that parents have with kids. Like being able to see their mother and their
Yes.
father as people and individuals who
Yes.
also may not want to do all these yucky chores.
Right. Like we don't, like as a parent, I don't do the dishes because I quote unquote care about the dishes. I do the dishes because I understand this is how a home needs to function. We
Yeah.
need to have clean dishes in order to make our life easier and functional. And kids are just as capable of not only doing the dishes, but like noticing when the dishes need to be done. And to speak to your point of interpersonal relationships, that's so important too, because building empathy is a skill. And so we need to give our kids practice building empathy. And this is a really, really powerful way to do that. When they are allowed the opportunity to participate in this way, they are able to build, like, strengthen those empathy muscles. And just the other night,
Totally.
actually, like this literally happened 3 days ago. I was saying goodnight to my preteen. And before I shut the door, she said, "Hey, Mom." And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "I see you and all that you're doing."
Whoa.
And that's not the first time that's happened. So
Oh my gosh,
when kids,
that's like angels singing, right?
huge, right? Like
Yeah.
kids don't know what they don't know, and that's not their fault. But if we show them and pull the curtain back, kind of in behind our everything that goes on in our brains every day, and show them what the invisible load is, and allow them participate in carrying it with us, they have empathy, they have awareness.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to affect the way they interact with first probably roommates. It will be their first experience
Yep.
with like running a household with other people, and then with eventual spouses, partners, whatever. I think developing those skills at a young age will just make it hopefully second nature as they then venture out into the
Yeah,
world.
no, totally. And even in just their solo life,
Right,
like there's
right.
so many people, adults in my DMs all the time saying, if I had just been taught this as a
Mm,
child, I wouldn't be drowning in all the little things in my life right now that pile up to become big things, because it's so hard to rewire your brain as adult, unlearn bad habits, teach yourself amidst everything else that you're juggling. if we can just teach them when they're young, they're going to have it figured out. So the little things won't pile up to be big things because they will already have built those skills, those muscles.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about the invisible work. Like, how do you define invisible work and mental load, and are they different? What are the nuances between those two phrases?
Sure. Yeah. So the
Terms,
way
I
I
guess.
define mental load, invisible labor, pretty interchangeable,
Okay.
is it's not the fact that you're doing the dishes. That's the physical task itself. It's the fact that you have 500 tabs open in your brain simultaneously while you're doing the dishes, right? You're tracking whether or not you're running low on dish detergent. You're trying to keep at the forefront of your brain the fact that like a season is changing and kids need new snow clothes and we need to take inventory of that so it doesn't have a snow day and we don't have boots for people that fit. So and so has soccer practice at 5, and so in order to be ready for soccer practice we need to have dinner prepared for them specifically at this time in order for them to then have time to eat, get prepared. I mean, it's all
Right.
these things going through our mind 24/7, and it doesn't turn off. It's not something that you can just clock in and out of. It's constantly running in the background. That is the mental load, and it's often so much heavier and so much more exhausting than the physical tasks themselves.
Right. It's more at a management strategic level than at that logistical
Yeah,
level. You
right.
know, I mean, some of that work can be invisible too. Like if the whole magic coffee table idea where it's just magically clean in the morning. It's amazing, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I like that distinction. I've kind of in the past thought of it, you know, as like the invisible load kind of encompasses all, and then the mental labor is more of the management side nuances. But
Sure. I mean,
yeah,
it's like
well,
semantics or whatever, but
right,
at the end of the day, it's understanding
exactly.
that in order to run a household, it's not just checking things off a list, that there's a list in your brain that's 500 pages long that is required in order to even check the boxes to begin with.
Absolutely. So yeah, so that, like you've mentioned, is a skill that can be taught. To take
Mhm.
ownership of that management piece, to own that invisible labor. Um, let's go there next. Like, because often I feel like, you know, when you have all these chore charts and lists of tasks and stuff, so much of when people think about training their kids to work in the homes, they often hop straight to the logistics, and they think about, okay, how to clean a toilet, how to do things, how to wipe a counter, all those things. And those are important, but let's talk about some of the higher level skills, some of those executive functioning skills that you've mentioned, that are probably a lot more important than some of the tactical, logistical things that they could learn on YouTube in a pinch.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a structure that I use to implement teaching this to my family and, thousands of families around the world. And like you called, like the practical skills of cleaning a bathroom counter is really important and it works together. But often what a chore chart misses is the very first step in task execution, which is the noticing.
Mm.
So it's one thing to know how to clean a bathroom, which is great, or I should say, which is good, but knowing when a bathroom needs to be cleaned and noticing that and then proactively doing it is great. So
Yes.
teaching those skills in tandem together is what starts to shift everything. And I always say, like, my goal here is not to train perfect, like, toilet scrubbing monkeys. My goal is to help them understand, kind of like you said, these higher level concepts. And we have what I call the deeper why conversations. Like, we're not doing this because mom said so. We're not doing this to check a box. We're not doing this to get a reward or a prize or whatever. We're doing this because we are a part of a family team. And we're doing this because we understand what burnout means. We understand what inequity means. We understand what gendered societal expectations for men and women in families and homes mean. And we understand why it's important to break the cycle of burnout and inequitable partnerships and the role that they play in that.
Okay, I mean, that's beautiful and important. How do you teach that at a level that a child understands?
Totally. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great question. So I have an audio course, and within the audio course, I have broken down what I call cycle breaking conversations. And it's
Mm.
a few very simple age appropriate, understandable conversations, toddlers all the way to teenagers, that explain these concepts in a way that clicks and sticks for their brain. And when they understand these concepts in a way that works for them, that's when things start to shift, because it changes how they think and how they approach working in the household to begin with. And so I break that down in the audio course. But all those things that you would think, like how could like a 5-year-old understand that?
Right.
I break that down. So like, for an example, I'll show you like what like an after is of a conversation like that. So this was like a little over a year ago. At the time, my youngest was 6.
Okay.
He's strong-willed, neurodivergent, spicy personality. If he doesn't want to do something in the home, good luck trying to get him to do it. We've had these conversations with him, really short, really simple conversations. We are in a public restroom. I'm helping him. And it's totally trashed. It's disgusting. And he's just like grossed out. And I said, oh man, looks like there needs to be a lot of noticing in this room. And then he rolls his eyes and says, sheesh, carry the mental load. Why don't you? So I like,
that's so great.
So like, again, like he understands that in order for this bathroom to get clean, somebody needs to be tracking it. Someone needs to be managing it. And there's all these steps that have to happen in order for that to then get cleaned. He gets that at 6 years old. If a 6-year-old boy can understand that and understand what invisible labor means, the importance and the role that it plays in managing a home and family, imagine in 20 years, what kind of man he's going to be, what kind of partner he's going to be, how he's going to be able to, out in the world, in the workplace, in his community, he needs, and then fill gaps without someone handing him a to-do list. He can see it proactively and then make it happen.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And that's why I asked you on here. I just love this concept of noticing and how important that is. And just that idea that it can be a skill. Let's kind of move to the experiment phase of our discussion and talk about some ways that you've done that in your own home, teaching your kids to notice things. Because, you know, we know they come not necessarily having that skill. Some of them do.
Absolutely.
Some kids do, but a lot of kids need a little bit of training there.
Right. And just because we, as women primarily, are like pro noticers, because we didn't ask it for this job, we didn't want this job, but we're by far and away the default noticer in the home. Just because we are really, really good at it doesn't mean our kids are going to be. It's something that we have to teach them how to do. And especially in regards to like neurodivergent children, they need to be taught in a way that works for their brain specifically. So I have a very simple 3-step framework structure that I use to teach this. The first one, circling back to like the cleaning skills, this is what I call the big 3. And it's 3 daily tasks that your kids have ownership over and responsibility for doing every single day on their own. It can be anything you want. It can even be 2 or 1. It doesn't really matter, but 3 is kind of a good place to start.
Right, kind of bite size.
Exactly. Example, my kids every day make their bed. Every day they check to see if the dishwasher needs to be unloaded. Emphasis on them checking themselves. If it does need to be unloaded, they take a section and unload it. And then the third one is they now manage the entirety of their laundry cycle, but we didn't start there. We did it in baby steps. So like, for example, a really good way to start with the laundry would be teaching them how to get the dirty laundry off the floor, check to see what needs to go in the hamper, and then check to see what is clean enough to be folded and put away. Cool. So bed, dishes, laundry, those are their big 3. And then in addition to their daily big 3, they are going to do one, what I call notice and do of their choosing. This can be anything they want. Right. And but I didn't just say, okay, notice things and then get pissed when they don't do it. Right. Like we break it down into really, really practical, functional modeling for them steps if necessary. So walking them around the house and showing them in different rooms. Okay. So as I'm scanning, let's say like the living room, for example, I'm just moving my eyes slowly through the living room. I'm kind of looking on the floor. Is there anything that's left out on the floor? Is there garbage? Is there stuff thrown over the backs of chairs? Are there toys? Where do those go? Sometimes you need to look up high. Like if we have a bookcase, I mean, I don't know, whatever it is,
Right.
it's going to sound a little unhinged to you. But again, we're pulling the curtain back in our mind
Yeah.
and showing them what's always been invisible, making it visible so they can start to see what is involved in cleaning a room, in noticing what needs to happen. I'll show them other things like, okay, here's in this space, there's a garbage can. You can notice how full it is. Generally, if it gets about this full, like to the top, that's when it needs to be emptied. I'm going to show you how to empty this garbage and then take it out to the bin outside. Or another example, like, here's how a dirty counter in a bathroom looks. If it starts getting like toothpaste gunk everywhere, there's splatters all over the mirror, that's a good sign that it needs to be cleaned. This is where you can get the cleaning supplies and do it. That's another thing you can notice. So you're giving them really concrete, specific examples, and then they get to choose what they want to notice and do for the day. And then the third part, like we talked about, is those cycle breaking conversations. So
Yeah.
all of this works together, shifts how kids think, and you go from a one mom band to a whole family team.
I'm curious about step 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they're choosing their own notice and do they report back on that? Like how
Yeah.
does what's the follow through on all that?
Yeah. So in order to encourage and just teach communication within a family, which is another important skill, when they're done with their big 3 and their notice and do for the day, they come and tell me and they'll say, hey, Mom,
Okay.
I'm all done. And I'll say, cool. What did you do for your notice and do? At this point, I know that they've done their big 3. Like we don't have to double check on that. In the beginning, though, I would say, okay, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Yes, yes, yes. But now they just say, hey, this is what I did for my notice and do. Awesome. Thank you so much. I see you. I appreciate that. That's really, really great work.
Awesome. Are there times that they do not do that? Do their notice and do? Or, I mean, are they just really awesome and do it every day?
Well, just because I think it's really important to like mention that just because my kids understand how to do this,
Right.
they've heard the conversations a million times. I mean, we kind of live and breathe this every day because this is my job and this is what I do to earn money for our family.
Right.
They get it. They really, really get it. And they're kids, just like any other kids. So it's
that was
not
my
like
question.
Exactly. It's not like we are operating in like a fantasy world where I'm Mary Poppins and I have perfect robot children.
Right.
Like we have hard days. There are going to be days where you don't want to do it. There are going to be days where you have different levels of capacity, just like us. And our house still needs to be able to function. And if we don't all work together, it all falls on 1 or 2 people. And that's not okay. That's too much for 1 or 2 people to carry. We still need to be able to work together. And honestly, being able to prioritize the work of managing your home and life within a busy schedule is a really, really important skill to learn. Like your life is kind of always going to be busy. There's never going to be an ideal time to make this happen. So we have to learn how to fit it in and prioritize it. And the way that I do that is using what's called pre-existing motivators. So I'm not giving them a reward. I'm not adding in something extra or special. It's stuff that they are experiencing in their everyday life already that they enjoy, like screen time, going to soccer practice, playing with friends, whatever it is. Those are kind of our main ones. You have to have your notice and do's. We kind of call the big 3 and your notice and do kind of a big umbrella term, just notice and do's.
Yeah.
You have to have your notice and do's, your family work done before you participate in those things.
I love the notice and do's because, we've tried a lot of different things in our family. We've had, we did zone work for a while where everybody was just in charge of their zone. And that can kind of work within that framework of notice. Sure. Like, what do you notice in your zone or whatever? But, and we'd rotate through and stuff like that. But sometimes it wasn't what I needed to have done that day. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, your zone is the family room. Family room's looking pretty good, but I really need extra help in the kitchen today because not everybody did their jobs yesterday or whatever happened. So I like that the notice and do gives a flexibility to be like, okay, now what really is actually a priority? What are the fires we need to put out?
Right.
And
yes.
do you have that skill to notice what fires need to
Right.
that you were tripping over shoes in the entryway, and that's what needs to be done,
Yes,
or whatever.
exactly. Exactly. Sometimes my youngest will come up to me still and say, "Hey, mom, if I empty the garbage, can that be my notice and do?" And I'll say, "I don't know. Does the garbage need to be emptied? Why don't you go do the work of noticing?" Because remember, the noticing is a huge part of the work. Go do the work of noticing if it needs to be emptied. And if it does, great. But if it doesn't, go see something else that needs to be done.
Great. Yeah, right. Because they might always notice the easy thing, you know? They're like,
Right. Well,
oh, well.
yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like it all, even like the things that we would term is like easy and that feels to us like, oh, that's not enough or, oh, that's all they did. I think it's really important too to keep our expectations in check because we do have a lot of, and it makes sense. We have a lot of emotional baggage around this skill. Like it's not the same as teaching them how to tie their shoes emotionally for us because we have been the ones who have been unfairly expected to do it all on our own for the most part.
Yeah.
And so a lot of stuff can come up for us when we are like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching my kids how to notice and they should be capable and they quote unquote should be doing more and they just don't care. Why is the dirty sock on the kitchen counter? What's going on? You know, but like ultimately, that's our stuff to deal with. Like resentment, frustration, anger, that's not our kids to deal with. And so teaching them how to do this and taking it back to just like, this is an emotionally neutral skill. Just like teaching my kids to
That's a
tie their
good,
shoes. This
yeah.
is an emotionally neutral skill. If my kid does something that feels like, for example, my son, for his notice and due yesterday, there were like 3 pillows on the living room floor. And we've been doing this for almost 2 years now. And he went over and just picked them up and put them on the couch. And it felt a little bit to me like he's trying to game the system, like, oh, this is so easy. And whether he is or
Right.
not, it doesn't really matter. But like, I could feel myself being like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You need to do more. That's not fair. Why da 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 da? And I just have to take a breath and be like, it all counts. It all matters. He noticed that on his own. He did it. Where this is, oh, he's 7 years old. This is a long game situation we're playing. He's lifting the weights. He's putting in the reps. It's going to grow and compound on itself as it goes. And like today, for example, another day, as he was leaving for school, he was like, I'm going to take out, Mom, all this trash. There were like boxes and multiple trash bags waiting to be taken out. He took it all out by himself. So it's just like a day at a time. Just let them have the freedom to choose, teach them, and keep our own stuff about it in check for ourselves so we can teach them and we can lead them.
Right. So it doesn't become this battle or this, you know,
Right.
because it's easy to turn that into, well, I'll show her, if you're doing that, if you're butting heads and if you're constantly asking for more. Yeah.
Right. And that's discouraging for kids. Like if it never feels good enough, if it never feels like they're meeting your expectations, that is like the opposite of motivating for them. But if they can feel like, oh, what I'm doing matters, even the quote unquote small things are important because they are important. All these little things add up and they matter. It's all of these little things that take up so much space in our brain.
Right.
And so when the little things are important and they're capable and we can teach them and kind of build those muscles as they grow. But like, let's just get them on the bike and pedaling and then we can, go faster or like, I don't know, it's not a perfect analogy, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
don't cut them off at the knees, build them up and support them and it will get better and easier.
Well, and I like what you mentioned earlier about vocalizing when you see them carrying the mental load, I guess is the best way to say it.
Carrying the mental load. Yeah. And then you can, the way you praise them can switch from, you took out the garbage. Thank you to you noticed the garbage needed to be taken out. I see you. You're such a good noticer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel that so much when like, because my kids all have they rotate through specific chores in the kitchen that they're supposed to do. And when one of them does it without me asking, It's like
Huge.
amazing. And I am all over it. I'm like, you just did that without me like I'm praising them to high heavens
Yes.
so that I can hopefully get them to realize how much better that is than just waiting for me
Yeah.
to tell them to do it.
Right, right. And being really specific about it in the way you teach it and having these conversations um, allows them the opportunity to understand, like you said, that those bigger underlying reasons, instead of just hoping they fill in the blanks, like talking to them about the importance of invisible labor and their role in it and why we're doing it this way versus a chore chart that just defaults all of the noticing onto primarily the woman or the mom to do the work of knowing and having an awareness of what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, why it needs to happen, and then making a list for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a finer point of the dishwasher. So each of them have that job to unload the dishwasher. And you said, so they each just kind of take it upon themselves to do it, a third of it, or
Yeah. So I
they
mean,
do the whole thing.
We just divide it up into three, like there's
Okay.
top shelf, bottom shelf utensils.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's how we
And
do it.
whoever
It just
gets there
operates,
first
yes,
does
first come, first serve.
what they want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
And they
I like
naturally
also.
have different, things that they like. My son loves doing the bottom shelf, which is weird for me because it's always the like hardest one, but he loves it.
Okay.
So he's naturally motivated to like check to see
get
if
there
it needs
first.
to be unlocked, to get there first. Yeah.
I just did an episode about just all the different experiments we tried to get the kids to take ownership of the kitchen, and one of those I thought was great, and maybe we just need to do more training and then it will work, where I just said, everybody just give me 15 minutes in the kitchen, and the first ones to get there can basically notice what needs to be done, if you save it till last, you have to end up scrubbing the hard dishes, whatever. That may be something I experiment with again once maybe I've laid more of a groundwork of talking to them more about noticing and what, maybe just bring them all into a messy kitchen and say, okay, guys, let's have a noticing activity. Let's notice what needs to be done, what might need to be done first, like the dishwasher being emptied, so that somebody can then load it, or let's just have this conversation about what we notice.
And you can do it like just as you can fold it in really easily to your life as you go. So, for example, like specifically in talking about cleaning up after dinner, my kids now are basically totally in charge of doing all the dinner cleanup. So after dinner, my husband and I kind of just peace out and they manage it themselves. They put on some music and they take care of it. But when we started, it looked like myself and my husband walking through with them and doing it together and verbalizing, like I said, the thought process as we go. So I didn't have to be like a separate, like, okay, here's a messy kitchen, let's all come and do it. It was like we were already there, dinner was done. And instead of them running off when they were done, I was like, oh, no. Okay, first step, before you leave the table, you're going to take your plate, take it over to the sink. If you have food on the plate, you're going to take the garbage, scrape it into the garbage, put it in the sink, run some water on it, you're good. Then next step, or, load it. But primarily, like, we just put it in the sink, I wash it, put it in the dishwasher. So anyways, those are semantics, but show them each step. Okay, next thing, I'm just kind of looking around. I'm going to grab as much garbage as I can in both hands. So whatever that is, I'm going to grab, put it away. Now, like the ranch bottle is out. Let's find the lid. Here's the lid. I'm screw it on. This is where it goes in the fridge. Okay, what's next? What do you guys see that can be done? Give them an opportunity to try. And we did that together, right? Because I'm already cleaning up the kitchen anyways. So I'm just now involving my kids and just speaking aloud the process to them.
Yeah.
We did that together for like a few weeks. Then they get it. They understand. It's easy for them because they have that awareness and the skills built in because they've been practicing in tandem with me. And now it's like, okay, they can clean up the kitchen.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's actually so kind of the framework that I've worked out for my family is we talk about being helpers, workers, and managers. So you start out as a helper, you help mom do stuff, and then you become a worker where you can you can do the work mainly on your own, but you need some guidance from mom and dad. And then you become a manager, and that's when you notice what needs to be done. You can kind of create your own system. You're not working within my system. You're owning that. So we have I have like a list of how they take care of themselves. So like, are you a hygiene manager? Do you brush your own teeth and not need reminding? Do you take showers without having to be reminded? So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same idea as how you taught them to clean the kitchen, but we just kind of speak that aloud, like, okay, you are being a helper right now, but I think you're capable of being a worker here. Like, what do we need to get you to that worker level? And then, this is like a self-evaluation where they can mark, okay, I'm moving up to a manager on this, and I don't want you to. Kind of the intrinsic motivation there is like not having me micromanage them, which nobody likes. So
independence. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's how we kind of talk through it. I love your terminology of noticing. That's probably the barrier that's keeping them all from becoming managers at their specific chores, is just being able to be like, oh, I just came home and there's some stuff on the table. I'm going to clear it. That's my job, You've given me a lot of insight into how I can train them to get to that management level. So I appreciate that about your system.
I love that. It's been very much like a step-by-step process.
Yes, totally.
And that's okay. Like, long game, they're learning, they're growing, and they are going to need support for whatever amount of time until they feel like they can be more independent.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it.
And it's also an interesting way to understand your own children too, right? Like, just to see what the different strengths are. And like, we have this whole list of, there's hygiene, there's sleep, there's food, there's clothing, there's finance, being able to manage their own money. And, I've had one leave home, and he had completely different boxes checked than my second, who is now 17. And it's kind of a beautiful thing, actually, even when you are recognizing the things they struggle with. It helps you kind of just be aware of, okay, that's where they need a little bit more support, but look how awesome they are at this.
Love that.
It's been a really good thing for those that struggle with some of the executive function to be able to be like, yeah, but you are awesome on the social part. You host your own parties. You invite people. You are a gracious host when they come over. You've got this social part down. Now let's just work on some of this more, let's work on how to clean your room,
Sure.
That
sure.
Kind of
yeah.
thing.
No, I love that. Like, turns out we're all human, and we all have strengths, and we all have areas where we are like still building those strengths.
Right.
I think that's really, really like gracious and generous. I love that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's even from that noticing level, it is amazing to see how some kids have different clutter thresholds, I guess. How do you work with that? Maybe we'll talk about in a bedroom at a bedroom level.
Like, gonna say
what do you do with bedroom cleaning? Yeah.
Yeah. So bedrooms, aside from the fact that for my kids' big three, they are making their bed every day, and they're checking to see if they have dirty laundry thrown around in their room and managing that. Aside from those two things specifically, I let them have their space and their freedom in the bedroom. And if they want to have it be cluttered, they can have it be cluttered. But what's really cool is once you teach them the cleaning skills, once you teach them the noticing skills, it's not uncommon for my most mess tolerant neurodivergent kid to, of her own volition, choose to clean her room for her daily notice and do, because she knows how to do it. She prefers it that way now because she sees how easy it actually is to do, and how it functions better. And it's just happening. I'm not begging her. I'm not nagging her. It's like, I just kind of let go and let her choose. And sometimes she chooses to let it stay cluttered, but lots of times she'll be like, hey, Mom, I cleaned up my room. I reset my room for my nose and do. Awesome.
Beautiful.
Love that for you. So letting them
Yeah.
have their freedom, letting them have their space, giving them the skills, and then allowing them the opportunity to have that like pride of ownership.
Yeah.
And again, they like some kids will, and some kids maybe will a little bit less. That's okay. But we still have within the common areas of our family, like as the leader, and the teacher in my home, because I'm an adult,
Right.
I get to say, this is the standard. We're not going for perfection. We're just going for clean enough. And like in our family, this is what a clean enough standard means for this space. This is what clean enough means for this space, because this is how it's going to function in the best way possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That brings up another conversation that I've had with my kids. They all have different tactics. Some of them will just agree, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that, and tell me what I want to hear, and then go do their thing and then not do it. Or some of them will be just flat out like, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, this isn't all the time, but when they're being,
Sure. Yeah.
when they're being that
when
way.
they're being children, when they're being
Right.
children.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, those lead to different conversations. So like with the ones that just flat out were like, no, I don't feel like clearing the table right now. I've started having conversations like, okay, that's obviously a choice you can make. I can't sit here and forcibly make you clear the table, but what is your plan for if you don't do it? Like, who is going to do it? Or do you think it should stay like that? Do you like how it looks? Do you like what's happening here on this table? Do you think we're going to be able to eat dinner the way the table is right now? If you don't like it and you don't think that's how it should stay, and especially how it should stay day over day and pile up, who do you think should be in charge of that? And, that just kind of makes them think like, oh yeah, if I don't do it, somebody has to do it. And I'm like, are you asking me if I will do that for you? And if so, like we'll have that whole conversation. Sure. Like, by not doing this, what implications does that have for the rest of the family? And I don't know if that's sinking in, but it usually like is like, okay, yeah, and I'm like, well, if you want me to do it, I could probably get to it, but I have this, and this first, and I probably won't be able to make dinner if I also have to clear the table and do this too. So are you okay with making your own dinner? Just kind of walking them through the process of what happens, what are the consequences if nobody does this?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like, I've noticed for my kids, lots of times what I think as defiance is actually just overwhelm. So if a table, for example, is particularly messy, it could be less about them saying like, F this, I'm not going to do it. And more about them looking at that and it registering in their child brain as being, whoa, this is so much. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
What, like this is, I don't know where to start. What do I do? I'm seeing 5 million things out. It's probably going to take me 5 hours to do it.
Yeah.
So hard pass. Like I'm just, no, because it's like, too much stimuli. It's overwhelming. And they can get flooded. And so I think sometimes there can be a gap in their ability to like just break it down into small steps. Yeah. So in those moments, I assume the best, meaning they could if they would. Something is blocking them from being able to do this. So I'm going to up my support for them. So for example, like I could be like, hey, this is a lot. I know it seems really overwhelming. Let's team up together really quick. I bet we can pound this out in 5 minutes. Let's put on a timer or let's put on a song. You choose the song and let's see if you can finish it before the song is done. Right. I'll grab this. I'm noticing this. What's one thing that you can notice to start? Okay, now what do you notice? Okay, let's go. Da-da-da. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
kind of
totally.
Make it a game a little bit. Just to show them like grab like arm in arm. Like, we got this. Come on, And also to your point, I think too, you can say like, hey, as you're working with them, like, I'm so glad we're working together because if this didn't get done, it would all just like land on my shoulders. And that's like so much for one person. So let's just like team up together and handle it. So we're creating those like positive experiences around work So then it gets coded in their brain as like, this is okay. This isn't
Right.
that bad. This isn't a fight. This isn't a battle. This is something that I'm capable of.
And I appreciate that reminder so much because I was like, that was my MO with my oldest kids when they were younger is we'd gamify everything. You know,
Mm.
I'd give them like Inspector Gadget missions to go
Mhm.
do this, and I'd make the message self-destruct, you know, all the things. And we had a whole litany of games. We'd play like the magic object kind of games, or, you know, all sorts of games.
Yeah.
But sometimes as we get older and get more tired, we forget to do that
Oh,
with some of the younger
totally.
ones. And
Totally. Sometimes I'm like,
you
I
just
do
get
not
into
have a game in me. I do not.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
But my
Yeah. And you
youngest
just want to
could
get it
benefit
done.
from some of that I used to do with my older ones when I had more energy and physical strength, etc.
Sure.
So,
I think too, like it's
yeah.
important to remind yourself, like choose your hard. You know,
Right.
like
Right.
a game, like when you're exhausted and you just like want the like effing table to get clean. Like that's the last thing you want to do is to gamify something. That's hard. It's also hard to get into a battle with your kid over getting it done. You know, it's
Absolutely.
also hard to create a situation in which your kid continually learns to push back against you because it's just a negative experience again and again and again. So I'll take, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, no worries, I got it, you know, and that's okay too. Long game. But
Yes.
I try to choose my hard in a way that's going to support both me and my kid in their learning now and in the long run.
Love it. Love it. That's a great reminder. You know, sometimes we can learn a lot from our younger selves. There's a lot of times when we're kind of hard on our younger selves and we're
Yeah.
like, you know, if only I had known this back then. But also we did a lot of great things when, you
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
in the early
We're
years
the
of
harshest
parenting.
critic on ourselves for
Totally.
sure. Yeah.
Totally. Well, this has been so enlightening. I would love to kind of end our conversation with some specific experiments that our listeners can try at home. So, what are, you know, 2 or 3 experiments that you would suggest, and then I'll add some of my own.
Yeah, great. I would start with teaching your kids how to notice. So if you have littles, you can do what I call noticing goggles. And it's just taking your hands
Ooh,
and cupping
that's
them
great.
around your eyes. And it's a really good way to explain what noticing means. And you can say things like, I'm going to teach you how to notice what needs to be done in this playroom. For example, noticing is another word for seeing. So we're going to put on our noticing goggles. And when we have our noticing goggles on, that means we can see really easily what needs to be done. So I'm scanning this room with my noticing goggles. When you spot something with your noticing goggles, beep really loud, like a metal detector or a robot. Beep, 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 beep. Oh my gosh, you noticed that those blocks were on the floor. So good at noticing. Let's go put them away. Okay, what else can you notice now? Sometimes we need to look up high. So we're just modeling it for them that way. With teens, you know, obviously we're not going to do noticing goggles, but you can show them how to reset a space. Show them what they're looking for, walk them through the steps like we talked about earlier, and then give them the freedom to choose what and how they want to notice.
Yeah, kind of like a walkabout. Like
Exactly.
I was
A noticing
picturing
walk.
doing that with my kids. Like, yeah, let's
Yeah.
just take a little stroll around the house
Yep.
and
Yep.
take turns
Doesn't have to be
noticing
long. You
things.
can even do just one room a day. That's fine. And yeah, show them what and how they can notice.
Awesome. Okay, great. I maybe we'll trade off here. So,
Sure.
one of the ones that I was thinking of is just to pick something that they already are at that management level for.
Mm,
You know, maybe it's just getting dressed. Like,
mm.
wow, I noticed you picked out your own clothes and you have such a great sense of style. You didn't need my help at all. You didn't need me to remind you to get dressed before you came downstairs to get ready for school. You know, like, whatever it is, there's something at every age
Sure.
that they can be a manager of.
Sure.
So just noticing and then verbalizing
Yeah.
that invisible. I always trying to the mental load is probably better.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
invisible labor that they have
yeah,
to do in order to
yeah,
make that happen. I like the phrase too,
yeah.
like you are so capable. Like you just got yourself dressed totally on your own. You're so
Mm,
capable.
Great. Great. Okay. Do you have another one for us?
Let's see. I would think of 1 to 3 things that you want your kids to be able to do every single day on their own. It's off your plate. Teach them how to do those things and then give them the responsibility of doing those things every day before they do screen time, before they go play with friends, before they do their sports activity. This is the thing that's most similar to a chore chart, so it'll have that sense of familiarity to it. We want our kids to know how to clean. We need to teach them how to clean. So teach them the steps involved in doing it, and then give them a chance to practice every single day being in charge of that.
Yeah. And one thing that I learned from you today is because my kids also do their own laundry, and 4 out of 5 kids now are managers of their laundry.
Awesome.
I don't know when they do it. I'm not involved at all. But it is a good reminder to me that it could be a daily thing for my youngest one, who is still learning and in that stage, where I usually think of it as a weekly thing, but that could be overwhelming. The idea of making that a daily job to say, okay, what clothes are out? Let's put everything where they need to go and notice if it's full enough to do. So that's one of the experiments I'm going to try here, especially with only with my youngest, because the other 3 at home have that one. But yeah, I love that experiment. That's a fabulous one. I guess the next one that I would suggest is to identify one area where your kid is almost ready to level up from either a helper to a worker, or from a worker to a manager. And just, even if you're not actually getting them up, just sit down with them and identify the steps that they need to take to get to that next level. Because just knowing what the steps are, like you were talking about with just the teaching part, like, okay, you are almost a manager with teeth brushing. I've been noticing that sometimes you're going to bed without brushing your teeth. And so I still feel like I have to manage that part a little bit to check on you. Maybe teach them the skill of habit stacking, or, what could we tie that to so that you always remember to do that? What alarm could we set on your phone?
Right. Or a visual reminder that could be supportive. Like what?
Right.
And I love asking them, like you were saying, like allowing them a chance to brainstorm and problem solve creatively to help support themselves and their own brains and learning styles in, like you said, stepping into that manager role.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think those 4 are just fabulous, and plenty for our listeners to choose from and try to implement. So this has just been such an enlightening and also fun conversation with you, and I so appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so great to chat.
Thank you so much for listening to the Family Lab podcast. If you want to learn more about Sam Kelly, you can go to her website, hellosamkelly.com, or follow her on Instagram at samkelly_world. She's got lots of great resources there, including her online course that she was talking about. You can also listen to some of my past How She Moms episodes about teaching kids to work. I have several of them that I will list all in the show notes. There's lots of case studies and other great ideas in there. A special thank you to my production assistant and all-around right-hand woman, Bailey Blake, and to my mother, Susan Singley, for playing my theme music. She used to play this all the time when I was a kid, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.